The hum of the spacecraft filled the cabin as the crew of the Phoenix prepared for launch. The mission was simple: leave Earth's atmosphere, explore the stars, and gather data. But for Dr. James Carter, the lead scientist, this was no ordinary mission. For years, he had been fascinated by an ancient theory that Earth was far older than history had ever suggested. Most of the scientific community believed Earth was young, just a few billion years old. But Dr. Carter wasn't convinced. He had discovered strange readings while studying the planet's core. There were patterns, signals, that didn't make sense. They suggested that Earth had been a part of something much bigger, something much older than what they were taught in school. But no one believed him. Most brushed it off as a mistake, a misunderstanding of data. Yet Carter knew he was onto something. Now this mission could be his chance to prove it. The countdown began, and the crew members went through their final checks. Their faces were calm, but Carter could see the uncertainty in their eyes. They knew they were about to embark on something unknown. Their task was to gather data from deep space, but Carter had a different goal in mind. He wanted more than just data. He wanted answers. As the ship roared to life and shot into the sky, Carter looked out the window at the shrinking Earth below. The blue planet was a beautiful sight, but to him, it was also a mystery. He thought about the thousands of years of history that Earth had gone through. Empires rising and falling, civilizations lost to time. Yet the truth seemed to be hidden beneath it all, waiting to be uncovered. The mission was routine for the rest of the crew. They went about their tasks, checking instruments, calibrating sensors, and communicating with Earth Control. But Carter couldn't focus on any of that. His mind was racing, thinking about the signals he had discovered. He had never shared his full findings with the crew. They would have thought he was crazy. But now, in the vast emptiness of space, the signals seemed stronger, clearer. There was something out there, something that could change everything. Hours passed, and the Phoenix cruised deeper into the void of space. Carter sat alone in the observation room, staring at the stars. He had studied them for years, but this felt different. His heart raced as a new signal appeared on his screen. It was faint at first, like a whisper from the cosmos. But then it grew louder, clearer. The signal was coming from a distant part of space, a place that had never been explored. Carter's pulse quickened. Could this be it? Could this be the answer he had been searching for? He quickly sent a message to the crew. "We need to change course," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "There's something out there, something important. I need to investigate." The crew responded quickly, but not without hesitation. "Are you sure, Dr. Carter?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, the ship's navigator. "We're supposed to be gathering data, not chasing signals." Carter looked at the screen, watching the signal grow stronger. "I know what I'm asking, Sarah, but this could be the discovery of a lifetime. We can't pass this up." Reluctantly, the crew agreed. They made a course correction, heading toward the source of the mysterious signal. The stars outside the window shifted as the ship veered off its planned path. The crew didn't understand what Carter was chasing, but they trusted him. After all, Dr. Carter was known for his brilliant mind, even if his theories were often considered radical. As the ship moved closer to the signal source, the tension on board grew. There was an excitement in the air, mixed with a sense of uncertainty. The crew didn't know what they were about to find, but they could feel it. Something was waiting for them. Dr. Carter sat in front of the main control panel, his fingers hovering over the buttons. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment that could prove his theory. If Earth was part of something much older, something grander than they ever imagined, this signal could be the key to unlocking that secret. Finally, the Phoenix arrived at the coordinates. The stars were dimmer here, as though the light itself was reluctant to reach this place. The crew stared at the screen, their eyes wide. In front of them, floating in the dark expanse of space, was an object. It wasn't a natural formation. It was a structure, a machine, something far beyond anything humanity had ever created. For a moment, No one spoke. The silence in the cabin was deafening. Dr. Carter stood up, his voice trembling with excitement. "This is it. This is the discovery that will change everything. We found it." The crew looked at the object in awe. It was an ancient artifact, something that didn't belong in this part of space, and yet here it was, waiting for them. The stars stretched out in front of them, endless and cold, as the Phoenix glided silently through space. The signal that had drawn them here pulsed faintly on the radar, a steady rhythm that seemed almost alive. Dr. Carter couldn't take his eyes off the screen, his fingers tapping nervously on the edge of the console. They were getting closer, closer to something that could rewrite history. He glanced around the control room. The crew was tense, eyes glued to their instruments, trying to make sense of the data. Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, who had been with him on many missions, was the first to speak. "We're getting close, Dr. Carter," she said, her voice steady but filled with a hint of concern. "What exactly are we looking for? You still haven't told us what this signal means." Carter hesitated, his mind racing. He hadn't shared his full thoughts with them. He couldn't. The truth was too big, too unbelievable. How could he tell them that Earth's entire history might be a lie? That humanity's past was connected to ancient civilizations far beyond Earth itself. "We don't know exactly what we're looking for," he said quietly, turning his gaze back to the stars. "But this signal, it's more than just random noise. It's a message, a clue to something that's been hidden from us." He didn't want to go into more details. Not yet. There was still too much uncertainty, too much that they didn't understand. But what he did know was that they were heading toward something huge, something important. The ship drifted through the emptiness of space, the vast silence pressing in on them from all sides. The crew fell into their usual routine, but Carter's mind was elsewhere. He had spent years studying the Earth's core, the strange energy readings, the anomalies that no one else could explain. Everything had led him to this moment. This signal was the key. He just had to figure out what it was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they arrived. The source of the signal was a massive object, drifting alone in the void. It was unlike anything Carter had ever seen. The structure appeared to be made of a material that didn't match anything from Earth's known history. It gleamed with a faint, eerie light, casting long shadows across its surface. There were no markings, no sign of its origin, only the cold, unfeeling void of space surrounding it. For a moment, no one spoke. The crew stared at the object in stunned silence, unsure of what to make of it. Sarah Johnson was the first to break the silence. Is it alive?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter shook his head. "No, it's not alive. But it's ancient, very ancient." He moved quickly to the communications panel, speaking to Earth Control. "We found it. The source of the signal. We're going to begin our investigation." The crew moved into action, preparing for the next step. They were all trained for moments like this, but even they couldn't deny the sense of awe that filled the room. What they had found was far beyond anything they had ever imagined. This was no ordinary mission. This was history in the making. As the Phoenix drifted closer to the object, Carter's thoughts raced. He had to get a closer look. There was something about it, something that pulled at him, something he couldn't explain. It was as though the object was calling to him, offering a glimpse into something ancient, something forgotten. It was almost like it had been waiting for them, waiting for someone to find it. The ship's sensors began to pick up strange readings as they moved closer. The energy coming from the object was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was as if the structure itself was emitting some kind of powerful signal, one that was both alien and familiar at the same time. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. "Prepare to dock," he ordered, his voice steady despite the rising tension in the room. "We need to get closer." The crew nodded, their movements sharp and focused. They knew that something big was about to happen. They just didn't know how big or what it would mean for humanity. As the Phoenix gently docked with the ancient structure, the crew members gathered in the airlock, their hearts pounding. They were about to step into the unknown. Dr. Carter was the first to lead the way, his eyes fixed on the object ahead. He knew that the answers they sought were inside that ancient machine, and once they unlocked its secrets, nothing would ever be the same again. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss, and the crew stepped out into the cold, dark void. They were no longer on the Phoenix. They were standing on the surface of something far older than Earth itself. Carter looked around, his breath catching in his throat. The surface of the structure was smooth, almost perfectly so, as if it had been shaped by a hand far more advanced than anything humanity could imagine. Strange markings covered the walls, but they were too worn to make sense of. As the crew moved forward, Carter reached out, his fingers brushing the surface of the object. The moment his hand made contact, something strange happened. The structure hummed softly, and the air around them seemed to shift. A faint light flickered from within, and the markings on the walls began to glow. Carter's heart raced. This was no ordinary discovery. They had found something extraordinary, something that had been hidden from humanity for eons. "Do you see that?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with awe. "I see it," Carter replied, his voice barely a whisper. "It's starting. The secrets of Earth's past are about to be revealed." And with that, they took their first step into the heart of the mystery, into a place that held the key to Earth's ancient history and the truth about their own origins. They were about to uncover something far bigger than any of them could have imagined. The crew stood in awe as they gazed upon the ancient structure that stretched before them. The markings on its surface pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of an old, forgotten world. Dr. Carter stepped forward, his hand still resting lightly on the object's cool surface. The air around them seemed to hum, vibrating with an energy that was both alien and familiar. He could feel it in his bones. This was not just a relic. It was a key, a doorway to secrets long buried. "We need to be careful," Carter said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We don't fully understand what we're dealing with here. This could be something far older than any of us imagined." Lieutenant Sarah Johnson nodded, her eyes scanning the walls, trying to make sense of the cryptic symbols that adorned them. "What do you think these markings mean?" she asked, her fingers brushing against one of the symbols, which caused it to briefly glow brighter. Carter looked closely, his mind racing. "These symbols, they're not from any known language on Earth, but they're not entirely unfamiliar either. They resemble ancient Sumerian script, but with a twist, something more advanced, more refined." The crew gathered around, their curiosity growing by the second. They knew they were on the verge of uncovering something monumental, but the deeper they delved into the mystery, the more questions surfaced. The hum of the structure grew louder, almost like a whisper just beyond the edge of hearing. Carter felt a strange pull toward it, as if the object itself was urging them forward. He motioned for the team to follow him into the darkened passageway that had opened in front of them. The walls seemed to shift, guiding them deeper into the heart of the artifact. As they moved further inside, the temperature dropped noticeably. It was as if they had crossed some invisible threshold. The air grew thick with an odd sense of anticipation, and Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The crew remained silent, the only sound their soft footsteps echoing through the seemingly endless halls. "Stay close," Carter instructed, his voice barely a whisper. "We don't know what else is here, or what kind of security measures this place might have." Sarah, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "Security measures? You think something like this might be protected?" Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he continued to walk deeper into the structure, his eyes scanning the walls, the floor, everything around them. He had the nagging feeling that they were being watched. But by who? Or what? They reached a large chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with strange, glowing panels. The panels flickered with images, visions of distant worlds, of advanced civilizations, and of beings that seemed almost otherworldly in their appearance. The images flashed by too quickly for the crew to fully comprehend, but Carter's heart skipped a beat as he recognized something familiar. "These images," he said, his voice trembling with excitement, "they're depicting the history of an ancient civilization, one that predates even Earth. This could be the civilization that seeded Earth's early history." The crew gathered around, staring at the images. Some of them were too alien to fully understand, but they could all see the connection, the common thread that linked these distant worlds to Earth. And in the center of it all was a single image, a planet, surrounded by a vast network of stars, with a massive, glowing symbol in the sky. "What is that?" Sarah asked, pointing to the symbol. It looks like Earth, but different." Carter's eyes widened. "That's the symbol of the ancient civilization I've been studying, the one I believe was once connected to Earth. This symbol represents a lost empire, one that spanned across the galaxy, and Earth was a part of it." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. For years, Carter had been dismissed as a dreamer, a scientist chasing after fantasies. But now, here in front of him, was the proof that Earth was not the young, isolated planet that history books had described. It had once been part of something far greater, far older, and much more powerful. But as the crew took in this revelation, something strange happened. The panels on the walls began to change. The images slowed down, becoming clearer. They were showing a battle, an epic struggle between two advanced civilizations. And in the center of it all was Earth, caught in the middle of this war. The ancient empire had been brought to its knees, its power scattered across the galaxy. Carter's heart sank as he watched the images unfold. He realized, with a chill running down his spine, that this wasn't just a historical record. This was a warning. "We need to leave," Carter said abruptly, his voice tense. "This place is not just a relic. It's a message. And I fear we've already uncovered more than we were meant to." But as he turned to leave, the walls of the chamber seemed to close in, as if responding to his words. The hum grew louder, more intense, and the images on the panels began to shift again. They were no longer showing the past. They were showing the future, a future where Earth would play a pivotal role in a galaxy-spanning conflict. The crew's anxiety heightened as the room seemed to darken, the walls vibrating with an energy that felt almost alive. Carter stepped back, his mind racing. This isn't just about Earth's past. This is about its future. Whatever happens next, Earth is at the center of it. He could feel the weight of those words pressing on him, as if the very structure of the object was trying to communicate with him, trying to tell him something that was just out of reach. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the images stopped. The chamber fell silent, the hum fading away, leaving only the sound of the crew's breathing. They stood in the dark, stunned into silence by what they had just witnessed. Carter didn't know what to make of it, but one thing was clear. Their discovery had just opened a door to something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And they were standing on the threshold, unsure of what lay on the other side. "Let's get back to the ship," Carter said, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. "We need to report this to Earth. Whatever this is, we need to be prepared." But even as he spoke, he knew that it was already too late. They had uncovered something that was meant to stay hidden. And now, the galaxy was watching. The crew moved swiftly back through the labyrinth of the ancient structure, their minds racing with the gravity of what they had just uncovered. The walls, which had once seemed so passive, now felt like they were alive, pressing in on them with a weight they hadn't noticed before. Dr. Carter led the way, his pace quickening as he felt an increasing sense of urgency. Something about the place seemed different now, almost as if it were aware of their presence. "We need to leave now," Carter repeated, his voice tight. The glow of the walls seemed to follow them as they moved, the shifting symbols appearing to study them, almost as though they had grown sentient. The air had grown even colder, and the hum, which had once been a quiet background sound, now felt like it was vibrating through their very bones. Carter glanced over his shoulder, his eyes flickering toward the strange symbols that had begun to pulse once again. They weren't just ancient artifacts. They were alive, in a way, recording their every move, responding to their presence. Sarah Johnson was close behind him, her expression a mix of fear and awe. What does all of this mean, Carter? What kind of civilization built this place? Dr. Carter swallowed hard, his mind trying to make sense of it all. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I think we've stumbled upon something much bigger than we realized. The civilization that built this structure, it wasn't just advanced. It was connected to something far older, something that may have shaped the galaxy itself. The team continued to move through the structure, now moving with a sense of purpose, but also of fear. Every corridor they passed through felt like it led deeper into a mystery that had remained hidden for eons. Carter had always been driven by the need for discovery, but now that drive was tempered with caution. They were in over their heads. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. Suddenly, they reached a large central chamber, one that seemed to have been untouched by time. The walls here were smooth and flat, etched with more of those strange symbols. But there was something else. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it sat an object, glowing softly with a light that seemed to come from within. It wasn't a natural glow, but something deliberate, as though the object had been designed to emit light, almost as a signal. The crew stopped in their tracks, staring at the object. Carter moved toward it slowly, his hand reaching out, almost instinctively. "This is it," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "This is the heart of the structure, the key." But just as his fingers brushed the object, a loud sound reverberated through the chamber, a low booming hum that rattled the walls. The glow around the pedestal brightened, and the symbols on the walls flared to life, flashing in rapid succession. Carter recoiled, his heart racing. This was not what he had expected. It was as if the structure was awakening, responding to their actions. "Get back!" Carter shouted, but it was too late. The ground beneath them trembled, and the entire chamber seemed to shift. The pedestal began to sink into the floor, disappearing into the darkness below. The crew stumbled back, their feet slipping on the now slick surface as the walls around them shifted. The ancient structure was moving, reshaping itself. Panic set in. Sarah grabbed Carter's arm, her grip tight. "What's happening? What did you do?" "I didn't mean to," Carter shouted over the noise, his voice shaking. I just touched it, and..." The tremors grew stronger, and the symbols on the walls began to pulse with increasing intensity, flashing in rapid patterns. The air felt thick, charged with energy, and Carter could feel it in his chest, a pressure building in his lungs. "We need to get out," Sarah yelled, pulling at Carter's arm. The crew scrambled, rushing toward the exit they had come from. But as they moved, something changed. The walls in front of them began to close in, the passageways shrinking, twisting. The structure itself was alive, adapting, becoming more hostile. Carter's pulse raced. There was no way out. Not like this. "Back. We need to go back the way we came," Carter shouted. "We need to find another exit, Before he could finish his sentence, the entire room shook again, harder this time, and the lights flickered. For a brief moment, everything went dark. Then the walls began to glow again, this time a deep, eerie red. It was as if the structure had gone from dormant to alert, fully aware of their presence. It was almost as if the structure itself had begun to view them as intruders. Please tell me we're not trapped." Lieutenant Johnson's voice was thick with fear now, and Carter could hear the panic in the crew members' breathing as they fumbled in the dark. Carter's mind was racing. "We're not trapped," he said firmly, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. "We just need to find the control center. If we can get to it, we can stop whatever is happening." "Control center," Sarah repeated, her voice incredulous. "There's a control center in this thing." "Yes," Carter replied, his voice desperate. "It's built into the structure, but we need to move quickly." They sprinted through the twisting hallways, each turn more disorienting than the last. The walls around them pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, almost as though they were alive, watching them. The crew struggled to keep up, their movements growing more erratic as the structure seemed to shift and breathe around them. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they'd found a door, a massive, sliding panel that seemed to hum with energy. Carter didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, his hands flying over the control panel beside it. The symbols on the wall beside him flickered and shifted as his fingers brushed over the panel. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a small chamber. Inside, the walls were lined with more of the strange glowing panels. In the center of the room was a large console, its surface covered in unreadable symbols and flickering lights. But at the center, there was a holographic map of the galaxy. It was ancient, far older than anything Earth had ever created, but there was no mistaking it. It was a map of the stars, showing paths that spanned across the entire galaxy. And there, at the center, was Earth. Carter stared at the map, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a control room. It was a command center for something far bigger. This civilization, the one that had built the structure, had mapped the galaxy, had planned their influence across the stars. And Earth had been a part of that plan. "This is it," Carter whispered, his voice barely audible. "This is what they left behind. A map. A guide. And Earth is at the center of it all." But as he spoke, the room began to shake again, and the hum grew louder, almost deafening. The walls around them seemed to pulse with energy, and the holographic map flickered, the image warping and distorting. "It's trying to tell us something," Carter muttered, his eyes wide with realization. "It's trying to show us the way." But before he could say more, the chamber went dark again, and the crew was plunged into silence, unsure of what would come next. The darkness was suffocating. For a few moments, the crew could only hear their own breathing, the soft echo of their footsteps, and the distant hum of the ancient structure that seemed to resonate in the very air around them. Carter stood frozen, his eyes scanning the now empty space, unsure of what to do next. The room had gone silent, but the sensation of something watching them remained, intense, unyielding. "Is everyone all right?" Carter finally asked, breaking the stillness. His voice echoed slightly, adding to the eerie atmosphere that had enveloped them. "Yeah," Sarah replied quietly, her voice betraying a hint of fear. "But I don't like this. It feels like we're being pulled into something much bigger than we ever intended." "We are," Carter replied with a grim nod. "But we have no choice. Whatever we just activated, it's leading us somewhere." The crew huddled closer, their unease growing with every passing second. The map they had seen moments before, the one showing Earth at the center of a galaxy-spanning civilization, kept flashing in Carter's mind. It was clear now. Earth had been more than just a small, isolated planet. It was part of a greater story, a tale that had begun long before humanity had ever taken its first steps into space. "We need to figure out how to stop this," Lieutenant Johnson said, her voice a little more composed now. "The structure is alive, Carter. It feels like it's reacting to us. But what exactly is it trying to do?" Carter shook his head. "I'm not sure yet, but the more we explore, the more I think we're not just dealing with a forgotten empire. This place, it's a relic, yes, but it's also a warning. Everything we've seen so far points to something far bigger, something that Earth is a part of. But it's also a threat." The gravity of Carter's words hung in the air. Earth, once thought to be a young and insignificant planet, now seemed to be at the heart of something far more complex, something with far-reaching consequences. But what? What could the ancient civilization have left behind, and why was it so important that they had hidden it for so long? "Okay, so what do we do now?" Sarah asked, clearly struggling to keep her composure. "We can't stay here forever. If we stay too long, This structure might lock us in, or worse. I know, Carter said, his mind whirling with possibilities. But we need answers. We need to understand why it's reacting this way, and what it wants from us. The walls around them shifted, almost as if they were listening to his words. The once silent structure began to hum again, the faint glow of the markings on the walls flickering to life. The symbols seemed to dance and shift, becoming clearer, as though they were trying to communicate something. We need to find the source of this energy, Carter continued, his voice growing more determined. The map we saw earlier, the one with Earth at the center, it's more than just a map. It's a guide, a roadmap to understanding the connection between Earth and this civilization. If we follow it, we might be able to unlock the answers we need. Sarah narrowed her eyes, taking in the scene around them. And what if this is a trap? What if this place is meant to deceive us? Carter hesitated, weighing the possibilities. Maybe, but I don't think so. It's not about deception. It's about survival. If this structure is warning us, it's warning us about something much bigger, something that might be coming. Earth's role in this, it's more important than we realize. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but there was no turning back now. They had already uncovered too much, seen too much to simply walk away. Whatever was coming next, they had to face it together. We follow the map, Carter said, his voice steady, even as uncertainty gripped his chest. We need to find the next part of this structure. The heart of it, the control center. Whatever lies there, it's the key. As the crew ventured deeper into the winding corridors, the structure seemed to change around them. The walls no longer felt just like stone. They felt alive, shifting subtly with every step they took. The hum of the building grew louder, almost as though it were speaking to them, urging them forward. The map they had seen earlier flickered in Carter's mind, its patterns etched into his memory. It had shown a path, a trajectory through the stars, from Earth to distant worlds. It hadn't been just a map of the galaxy. It had been a map of power, a map of connections that spanned beyond the known universe. Earth was not isolated. It had been connected to this vast, intergalactic network, a hub for an ancient empire that had once dominated the stars. Carter stopped suddenly, his eyes catching a faint glow in the distance. A doorway had appeared, carved into the rock like a passage leading into the heart of the unknown. The glow came from a set of crystal-like structures embedded into the walls on either side of the door. The crystals pulsed gently, sending ripples of light through the darkness. "This is it," Carter whispered, a sense of dread and excitement rising in his chest. The heart of the structure, the place where the answers are hidden. The crew gathered around, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the crystals. As Carter stepped forward, he could feel the energy in the air shift, becoming thicker, more concentrated. It was as if the very fabric of space was warping around them. Sarah stepped up beside him, her eyes narrowing. "You sure this is the right place?" "I'm sure," Carter said, his voice unwavering. "This is the core. If we're going to understand what Earth's connection to all of this is, it's in there." They crossed the threshold into the room beyond. The air inside was thick with energy, humming softly as if in anticipation of their arrival. The walls were covered in more glowing symbols, and in the center of the room stood a large, spherical object. It pulsed with a brilliant light, casting long shadows on the walls. The object seemed to be alive, its surface shifting and changing like liquid metal. Carter reached out, his fingers brushing against its surface. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy ran through his body, and his vision went white. For a brief moment, he saw the stars. Not just the ones they had studied, but the stars as they had been, as they would be. He saw Earth, too, more than just a planet, but a nexus, a place of incredible importance. The ancient civilization that had built this structure hadn't just left it behind. They had connected it to something even greater. Earth was a part of something cosmic, a piece of a larger puzzle that stretched across the galaxy. As the vision faded, Carter gasped, pulling his hand back. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his mind was racing. What did you see?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. Carter shook his head, trying to regain his composure. I saw Earth's role. It's more than we realized. This structure, it's not just a relic. It's a marker. A warning. Earth is at the center of something far greater than we could ever imagine. And whatever is coming, it's going to change everything. The crew stood in stunned silence, the weight of Carter's words settling over them. They had only just begun to understand the true magnitude of what they had discovered. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on their next move. But one thing was certain. They couldn't turn back now. The air in the chamber felt thick with tension, as if every molecule was charged with anticipation. Carter's mind was still reeling from the vision he'd experienced, a glimpse of something vast and unfathomable. The walls around them seemed to hum in response, as if the structure itself was alive, aware of their presence. The sphere they had found was more than just a relic. It was a key to something that had been hidden for eons, something that was far bigger than anything they had imagined. "We need to figure out what this means," Sarah said, her voice low and cautious. "The vision you saw, Carter, it was like Earth was, connected to something much greater. But what is it? What do we do with this knowledge?" Carter turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "I'm not sure. The structure has been dormant for so long. I think it's waiting for us to unlock its secrets. This sphere, it's not just a map or a guide. It's a connection to everything. The civilizations that came before us, and the ones that might come after us. It's all interconnected, and somehow, Earth is at the center of it." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Carter's words sinking in. They had thought Earth was just another planet in the vast expanse of the galaxy, isolated and insignificant. But now, it seemed like Earth was part of something much larger, a focal point, perhaps, of an ancient, intergalactic story that had yet to unfold. "We need to get back to the surface," Lieutenant Johnson said, her voice steady despite the growing uncertainty. "Whatever's happening here, we can't stay too long. We need to report what we found." Carter hesitated. He knew that leaving now could mean abandoning the only lead they had, the only chance they had to understand what Earth's true role was. But the pull of the surface, of returning to the familiar safety of their ship, was strong. The air in this place was suffocating, charged with an energy that seemed to hum with a life of its own. "We can't just leave," Carter replied, his voice firm. "This is bigger than just us, and bigger than Earth. This structure, this sphere, it's calling us to do something. We have to finish what we started. If we leave now, we may never get another chance to unlock its secrets." The crew fell silent, each person grappling with their own sense of doubt and fear. But there was also something else, a feeling of urgency, of destiny. They had come this far. They couldn't turn back now. "Let's keep going," Carter finally said. "We're not the only ones who've been here. This place, this structure, was built by a civilization that was capable of things we can't even begin to comprehend. They left us this gift, or this warning, for a reason. We need to figure out what it is." As they made their way deeper into the structure, the corridors seemed to shift around them, becoming more labyrinthine, more disorienting. The soft hum of the energy in the walls had grown louder, more insistent. The crew moved cautiously, their steps echoing in the silence, the only sound the pulsing rhythm of the building itself. "This is like walking through a living dream," Sarah muttered, her voice barely audible. "I feel like we're being led somewhere." "We are," Carter replied, his eyes scanning the walls. The symbols that had once been inscrutable now seemed to make more sense. There was a pattern to them, a message embedded in their glow. "This isn't just a structure, it's a communication device. It's trying to tell us something, but we don't fully understand it yet." As they rounded another corner, a new room came into view, and Carter's heart skipped a beat. This chamber was different from the others. It was vast, and at its center was a massive pedestal, holding what looked like a holographic projection. The air around it shimmered with energy, as though it was alive, waiting for them to approach. Carter stepped forward, his heart racing. He had a feeling that this was it, the final piece of the puzzle. He wasn't sure how he knew, but he felt it deep in his gut. This room, this pedestal, this projection, it was the key to unlocking everything. The projection flickered to life as Carter stepped closer. The image that appeared was like nothing they had ever seen. It was a star map, but not like any map they had ever studied. This map was alive, shifting and changing in real time. It showed not just the stars, but the movements of ancient civilizations, the rise and fall of empires, and paths that stretched across the galaxy. In the center of the map, Earth was illuminated in brilliant light. Carter's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the projection. The stars around Earth seemed to pulse with life, connected by streams of energy, each line representing a path, a story that had been told across the ages. "This is it," Carter whispered. "This is the true history of the galaxy. This is the legacy of the civilization that built this place." And Earth was at the center of it all. Sarah stepped closer, her eyes wide with disbelief. So, Earth wasn't just a backwater planet. It was a key point in a galactic network. "Exactly," Carter replied. "We thought we were isolated, insignificant. But we were wrong. Earth has always been at the heart of something much bigger. This civilization, whatever they were, they saw Earth as a hub, a central point in their web of influence across the stars." Lieutenant Johnson took a step forward, her expression unreadable. "But what does it mean? If Earth was at the center of this network, why are we only learning about it now?" "That's what we need to figure out," Carter said, his voice filled with urgency. "This map, it's showing us something important. But we need to keep going. There's more to this. I can feel it." The crew nodded, and they stepped forward together, their eyes locked on the projection. As they approached the pedestal, the map began to shift again, highlighting new paths, new connections. And at the edge of the galaxy, a dark shadow loomed, slowly moving toward them. Carter's heart raced as he realized what they were seeing. It wasn't just a map of the past. It was a map of the future. The shadow at the edge of the galaxy was coming closer, and it was heading toward Earth. "We're not just learning about the past," Carter said, his voice steady but filled with gravity. "We're being shown what's coming, and we're not ready for it." The crew stood in silence, their minds racing as they tried to process the enormity of what they were witnessing. Earth, once thought to be a young, insignificant planet, was now at the center of a much larger story. And whatever was coming, they had no idea how to stop it. But one thing was certain: they had uncovered a truth that would change the course of humanity's future. And they had to act before it was too late.